In this video, I'm going to show you how you can manually enter a traverse into Microsurvey CAD. This can be in the case where you had your field notes in front of you and you just needed to input it onto the computer. But before we do that, we're going to go to MS Tools, System Toggles, and we're just going to go over some of the field note COGO entry settings. So the first one, Mode, you have either side shot or traverse. If you select side shot, what it'll do is continue prompting you for side shots after each setup, whereas if you have traverse, it'll just use the last side shot as the new setup point when inputting your information. That'll be more in the case if you're just doing a circular traverse and not taking many side shots. Instrument target heights, this is only affected when you are using the non-dialog box. And what this does is, if you have it turned on, after you inputted your target height during your setup, it'll also prompt you for your target heights for each side shot. Whereas if it's turned off, it'll just use the same height from your setup point and won't prompt you every time. Horizontal vertical distance. If this is turned on, what it'll do, it'll use a vertical distance, and if it's turned off, it'll use a vertical angle. So this is really handy for when you're using 2D. If you're using 2D, you want your vertical distance to be 0, which is the default, and you don't have to change anything. Whereas if you had vertical angle with this turned off, it'll always default to 0 degrees, and you'd have to type in a zenith of 90 every time to work in 2D. So in our example here, we're going to be working in 2D, so we want this turned on. Through azimuth surveying, what this is whenever you're inputting any angles into your program, it'll calculate them based off your true azimuth of your project instead of what you set your backside to. Description translation. What this is a CSV file within the program data of Microsurvey CAD, and it has two columns, one with numbers and another one with descriptions. If this is turned on, it will look at that CSV file, and any descriptions you have for your points that have numbers, it'll calculate the corresponding description and apply it to that point. Auto coordinate. This is for working with phase 1 or phase 2. What it'll do is, if it's turned on, after you've inputted your phase 1 information, it'll automatically calculate the point. Whereas if it's turned off, it'll wait until you've inputted your phase 2 information before calculating the points. Offset shots. This can be either parallel or perpendicular. This is really handy for when you're shooting trees. So if you want to shoot the center of a tree, you can either aim directly towards the middle of the tree and use a parallel offset, or shoot the side of the tree and use a perpendicular offset. And finally, auto number points. This is for when you're working in sequence, and what it'll do is automatically number your points to the next higher point after the one you've inputted. This is in the case where everything you have was taken in sequence and you don't need to jump between different numbers. And also there's the COGO options. That's just if you had, for COGO entry, you wanted to add an extra rotation to the point. So if you inputted 80 degrees and you had your 20, it'll calculate 100 by adding the 20 to the 80. But we're not going to worry about that. The only one we're checking on for this example is the horizontal vertical distance. So I'm going to press OK, and we'll get into the manual traverse. I'm going to go to traverse, manual, enter traverse. And here we don't have any existing files, so we're just going to create a new one. And it's going to default to the same name as your project name and save it in the MSJ folder, which is alright. So I'll save that. Here you can enter your traverse parameters, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. And here now it's prompting if we want to use the active editor for entering shot data. What this will do is open up the active traverse editor so that you can input your information that way. In this case, we want to use the dialog boxes, so we're going to say no. So here it's asking if we want to use the dialog boxes. In this case, we do want to use it. If we're to say no to this menu here, it'll use the command line, but we don't want that. So we're going to say yes. And here we can start with our first point information. So here we're set up on point 2, and we're backsiding point 1. And notice how also the true azimuth surveying is toggled off from the system toggles that we were working on before. Now we don't have any information for point 2 and 1, so we have to input them. So we're just going to go to edit and input the points manually here. I just skipped ahead after I input the information, and now I'm just going to press OK. that's going to generate 0.2. And I'm going to do the same thing for 0.1. So here I have the information. I'm going to press OK. So now that I got my 2 points in here. I'm working 2D, so I'm not going to worry about any of these heights. I'm just going to press OK. And now you can start inputting your side shot information. So I'll just skip ahead until I had the first point inputted so that you can see what I'm doing. So here I've inputted point 10, which was a post, and it had an angle of 328 and a horizontal distance of about 31 meters. So now that all that information's in there, I can just press OK. It's going to give me the point information that it's storing. Press OK. And then it's off to the next point. Now I took several shots from this first setup, so I'll just skip ahead until I have all 3 of them inputted. So now that I have my last point here, I'm going to just press OK to input it. OK. And now I'm not going to have any more points because I only had 3 shots from that first setup. So I'm going to click on Next Setup. In here, it's going to default to the last point I shot and the last setup point I was at, which in this case is what I want. So I'm going to press OK. And off, doing the same process. Now this gets a little repetitive, so I'm just going to fast forward until I have all my points inputted into my traverse. So here I just inputted my last point. I'm going to press OK. OK. And now I don't have any more setups, so I can just close this. And I can close this as well. What it's going to do is going to just finish computing the points. So if I dare to do a zoom extents, you can see all my points here. I'm just going to turn on my IPNs and IPD, so just so you can see the points better. So you can see all my setup points, and all the side shots, and all the information that I have here. Now, if I were to open my Active Traverse Editor by going to Traverse, Active Traverse Editor, you can see all the information here from the first setup, the 3 side shots, my second setup, the 2 side shots, and my third setup and the 2 side shots from there as well. Another thing that you can do is view all the traverse lines graphically. So we're going to go to Traverse, Show Traverse Graphically. And the same, we're going to say no because we just want to visualize it. So here you can see our setup stuff. Point 1 does not have any lines because that was the back sight line. That's why there's no side shot lines on it. But if I zoom in and out, it's gone because I didn't draw it, I just had it shown. Now I actually want to draw them. So for that, I'm just going to create a new layer. And I'm going to call it Traverse. So that way I can toggle it on or off as I need it. Let's call this Traverse. Make it current. And now I'm just going to run that routine again. Show Traverse Graphically. This I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes to draw the side shots along the main traverse. And because I have my draw distance and bearings toggled on, it's going to start labeling everything. So now it's just a matter of picking a side. And it'll start labeling each line as I go. If you don't want to do that, you can just toggle on draw distances and bearings, and it won't do that. So here, I'll just zoom in more so you can see. So you can have my point 2 here to point 9. You can show the bearing and the distance as well. And that is how you manually input a traverse into Microsurvey CAD.